The crystal glasses clinked delicately against fine bone china as Eleanor Reynolds presided over yet another of her elaborate dinner parties. In the grandeur of her Westchester mansion, beneath the soft glow of a chandelier that had witnessed decades of power plays and whispered secrets, she reigned supreme. At 65, she remained the undisputed queen of Reynolds Pharmaceuticals, her silver hair arranged in an immaculate chignon, her Chanel suit a testament to a lifetime of careful image cultivation. I sat at the opposite end of the long mahogany dining table, keenly aware of the empty chair beside me. My husband, Michael, was absent once again, a fact his mother wasted no time in exploiting. "Such a shame Michael couldn't join us tonight," Eleanor remarked, her voice carrying just the right note of practiced concern. "These West Coast trips seem to be getting more frequent, don't they, Sarah?" I lifted my wine glass with measured grace, taking a slow sip of Bordeaux before replying evenly. "The San Francisco expansion requires hands-on management, but he'll be back next week for the board meeting." What I didn't say, what I let settle unspoken among the murmurs of New York's elite, was that Michael's increasing absences were no accident. Eleanor had been methodically orchestrating them, manufacturing endless crises that demanded his personal presence on the opposite coast. A quiet war had been raging for the past year, one where she sought to weaken my position within the company while grooming her nephew, Bradley, as its future leader. She underestimated me. A vibration against my leg signaled an incoming message. I discreetly glanced at my phone, documents confirmed. Everything's set for tomorrow's board meeting. The text was from David, my attorney. A small, private smile played on my lips as I considered the reckoning that awaited my mother-in-law. While she had been maneuvering in the shadows, I had been gathering my own arsenal of evidence. Years of financial manipulation carefully documented, a case as airtight as the designer handbag clutched in her manicured hands. Eleanor, oblivious to the impending storm, turned her attention back to her circle of longtime confidants. "Sarah's been so busy with the research division," she said, her tone laced with thinly veiled condescension. "Though I must say, running a pharmaceutical empire requires a deep understanding of family traditions. Don't you agree, Margaret?" The implication was clear. I was an outsider. A scholarship girl from Ohio who had married into the Reynolds dynasty, whose presence in their world was tolerated but never truly accepted. My PhD from Harvard, my 15 years of tireless innovation within the company, none of it mattered in Eleanor's eyes. To her, I was and always would be new money, an upstart who did not belong. Dinner dragged on through course after decadent course, each dish more elaborate than the last, each exchange another calculated dig, another reminder of Eleanor's power. I endured it with quiet poise, maintaining the role of dutiful daughter-in-law while my mind remained fixed on the plan set in motion. Later that night, in the quiet sanctuary of my home office overlooking Central Park, I spread the documents before me, absorbing every detail one last time. Bank statements, transfer records, board minutes. A meticulous paper trail revealing how Eleanor had been siphoning company funds into personal accounts for years. She had grown careless, too confident in her untouchable status, too convinced that no one would dare challenge her. The ringing of my phone pulled me from my thoughts. Michael's name flashed across the screen. "How was dinner?" he asked, his voice weary from another long day in San Francisco. "The usual performance," I replied, leaning back in my chair. "Your mother brought up the succession issue again." A sigh. "Sarah, I know it's difficult, but she's just old-fashioned. Give her time." 15 years, Michael. My voice was steady, but there was an edge beneath it. "And now she's trying to override your father's will and remove me from the company I helped build." Silence stretched between us. For a brief moment, I considered telling him about tomorrow, about the carefully laid trap that would bring Eleanor's empire crashing down. But no, his reaction needed to be genuine. "Just try to be patient," he said finally, a quiet plea. I thought back to the first time I had met him, at a biotech conference at Stanford. He had been brilliant, kind, passionate about modernizing his family's company. We had fallen in love over discussions of clinical trials and R&D innovations, never once anticipating the unyielding force that was his mother's opposition. Morning arrived crisp and clear, the Manhattan skyline gleaming in the early light. I dressed with precision, choosing a tailored navy suit and the pearl earrings that had once belonged to my grandmother, a small, personal reminder of my own legacy. By the time I arrived at Reynolds Pharmaceuticals headquarters, the building was already humming with the energy of a new day. Employees greeted me not as the boss's wife, but as the executive who had revolutionized the company's research division, who had secured 3 breakthrough patents, who had fought and earned her place at the top. Inside the boardroom, Eleanor was already seated, exuding her usual air of effortless control. Around her, the older board members listened with reverence, while Bradley lounged nearby, his Italian suit and Rolex a silent declaration of his entitled upbringing. "Sarah, darling," Eleanor called, her voice laced with artificial warmth. "We were just discussing some exciting changes. I think you'll find them interesting." "I'm sure I will," I replied smoothly, taking my seat just as David entered, a leather portfolio in hand. The meeting unfolded as expected. Quarterly reports, market projections, expansion updates. And then Eleanor cleared her throat, her posture radiating quiet triumph. "Now for the main item on today's agenda," she announced. "Given the company's rapid growth, we must consider succession planning. While Sarah has contributed in her way, I believe we need someone with a deeper connection to our family's values." She glanced toward Bradley, who straightened in his chair, clearly prepared for his coronation. "Before we continue," I interrupted, my tone light but firm, "I have some documents the board should review." David moved efficiently, distributing the files to each member. I watched as Eleanor's expression shifted, from mild annoyance to dawning horror. She flipped through the pages, her carefully cultivated composure cracking as she realized what she was looking at. "These records," I began, my voice clear and unwavering, "detail systematic misappropriation of company funds over the past decade. Unauthorized transfers, ghost employees, inflated contracts with shell companies. All leading back to personal accounts controlled by Eleanor Reynolds." The silence in the room was absolute. Eleanor's hands trembled slightly as she gripped the papers. "This is preposterous," she breathed, her voice faltering for the first time in all the years I had known her. "How dare you? Every transaction is documented," I cut in smoothly. "Every number verified. The board will find the evidence quite compelling." For the first time, the Queen of Reynolds Pharmaceuticals looked uncertain. For the first time, she realized that she was the one who had been outplayed. The boardroom remained thick with tension, the weight of revelation pressing down like an iron hand. Yet, I remained composed, my voice measured as I continued. "The external auditors have verified everything. There are also records of your attempts to manipulate share values before major trades. Actions that, as you well know, constitute a federal offense." Across the table, Bradley shot to his feet, his face flushed with outrage. "You can't speak to her like this. She built this company." I turned to him, my gaze unwavering. "No," I corrected, my voice cool, unwavering. "Robert Reynolds built this company. Your aunt has been slowly bleeding it dry, using its resources to sustain her social standing while jeopardizing the legacy your uncle worked so hard to create." The room erupted into chaos. Older board members demanded explanations. Younger executives exchanged stunned glances before calling for immediate action. Papers rustled, voices overlapped, and through it all, Eleanor remained frozen, her carefully curated world fracturing before her very eyes. She turned to me at last, her voice barely above a whisper. "You planned this," she said, the words trembling between fury and disbelief. I met her gaze steadily. "I learned from the best," I murmured. "You taught me that patience and careful documentation are everything in business. I doubt this is quite what you had in mind when you gave me those lessons." The next few hours unraveled in a blur. Emergency meetings, frantic legal consultations, hushed discussions among shareholders and board members. By evening, Eleanor had been formally suspended pending a full investigation. The board, in a unanimous decision, confirmed what Robert Reynolds had once envisioned. I was now CEO of Reynolds Pharmaceuticals. When I finally returned to my office, exhaustion and triumph warring within me, I found a message waiting on my phone. "Just landed. Heard what happened. Coming straight to the office." Michael. My heart clenched. This would be the hardest part. He arrived within the hour, shoulders heavy with fatigue, confusion flickering in his eyes as he stepped inside. "Sarah," he said, his voice tight. "What have you done?" "What was necessary," I replied, my tone calm but firm. Without hesitation, I slid a separate file across the desk toward him. Inside, meticulously compiled, were records of every instance of his mother's interference. Not just in the company, but in our marriage. Every fabricated business emergency that had pulled him across the country. Every underhanded attempt to drive a wedge between us. Michael flipped through the pages in silence, his jaw tightening. She was never going to accept me, I explained gently. And she was willing to dismantle your father's legacy to maintain her control. I couldn't let that happen. His fingers raked through his hair as he exhaled, a weary, shuddering breath. I knew, he admitted, almost to himself. I think I always knew she was manipulating things. I just couldn't face it. She's your mother, I said softly. You wanted to believe the best of her. A long silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken emotions. Then, at last, he looked up, eyes searching mine. And now, I said, we rebuild. The company. Our marriage. But on our terms. I held his gaze, steady and unwavering. Your father believed in me. He believed in us. It's time we honored that faith. The months that followed ushered in a new era for Reynolds Pharmaceuticals. We modernized research facilities, expanded clinical trials, and forged international partnerships that redefined the company's reach. Transparency replaced secrecy. Innovation replaced stagnation. Investors responded with confidence, and the stock price soared. Eleanor retreated to her Westchester mansion, her presence in the corporate world reduced to whispers in the social circles she had once dominated. At charity galas and exclusive luncheons, the same hushed question lingered on everyone's lips. How had the outsider from Ohio outmaneuvered the formidable Eleanor Reynolds? A year passed. I sat in what had once been Eleanor's office, now transformed into a sleek, modern command center. Its structure still preserving echoes of its past, yet infused with the spirit of the future. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the Manhattan skyline stretched before me, a city of endless ambition and possibility. This kingdom had not been handed to me by birthright. I had earned it. A knock at the door drew my attention. David stepped inside, a small leather-bound journal in his hands. Mrs. Reynolds, he said, his tone carrying something unusual, an almost reverent weight. I found this while organizing the transition documents. I think you should see it. He placed the journal on my desk. The leather was worn, its edges softened by time. As I opened it, my breath caught. It was Robert Reynolds' handwriting. The entries spanned years, but it was the final one, dated just weeks before his passing, that sent a shiver through me. Asterisk, Sarah will find this when she's ready. I've watched her fight for acceptance, prove herself again and again, never compromising her principles despite Eleanor's constant opposition. She has what this company needs, not just intelligence and drive, but integrity and vision. Eleanor will never forgive me for this choice, but the future belongs to those who build bridges, not walls. Sarah understands that. It's why I chose her as my successor. It's why she'll lead Reynolds to heights even I never imagined. Asterisk. Tears pricked at my eyes. He had seen it in me all along, not despite my background, but because of it. Every challenge I had faced, every barrier I had shattered, had prepared me for this moment. A buzz from my phone broke my reverie. A message from Michael. Just landed. The Singapore deal went through. Turns out your idea about expanding Asian clinical trials was brilliant. No surprise there. I smiled, my heart swelling. Our marriage had changed, strengthened, rebuilt on honesty and shared purpose rather than obligation and tradition. The company was thriving. Its research division led breakthrough developments in personalized medicine, reshaping the future of healthcare. Eleanor had taught me many things, about power, about patience, about the folly of underestimating those you dismiss as beneath you. But Robert had taught me something even greater. That true legacy isn't about clinging to the past. It's about building the future. As the sun dipped below the Manhattan skyline, casting golden light across my office, I reached for the journal and, with steady hands, turned to the final page. I picked up my pen and wrote, Asterisk. Today marks 1 year since we changed the company's direction. Your faith in me was not misplaced. Every decision I make honors the legacy you entrusted to me, not just of business success, but of ethical leadership and innovation. The Reynolds name now stands for something greater than tradition and power. It stands for progress, for breaking barriers, for proving that true worth isn't inherited, it's earned. Asterisk. I closed the journal and placed it in the desk drawer, where 3 generations of Reynolds leaders had once stored their thoughts and ambitions. Outside, the city lights shimmered against the night sky, a constellation of possibilities stretching into the horizon. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But I was ready. Armed with the lessons of the past and a vision for the future, I had taken what Eleanor had built and turned it into something better.